Good morning, everyone. My name is Akesh Gupta and I'm with Lightspeed Solutions. Today in this presentation, we will take our application that we have designed in the prior video presentations and move it to SQL Azure. SQL Azure is the Microsoft cloud-based SQL server, and we would like to see how to set up SQL Azure, how to migrate information from a regular SQL server to SQL Azure, and then use RSP Designer with SQL Azure. This will also prepare us to have our application move to the cloud, which will be presented in one of the other presentations, which will basically make up the entire application as well as database all ready for the cloud. So far, what we have seen here is that we have an application to manage accounts, account types, and we have implemented our security as we have discussed in other presentations. And we can definitely work with local SQL Server, which is what we have done so far. When we discuss Microsoft SQL Azure, that is basically the server that's available to us once you sign up for the Microsoft Cloud Services. Like in this example where we have Windows Azure platform, and we have just basically logged in, started with our 3-month free subscription, and the very first thing we'll do is we'll make our own database server. So once you click on a database, you can basically definitely say that you would like to make a new SQL Azure server, because we already have created our 3-month free trial subscription. So once the subscription is ready, the next thing is to create a new SQL Azure server. When you click on it, system asks you, please pick a free subscription, or whichever subscription you would like to use. I would say next, pick up whichever region you would like your SQL server, Azure server, to be located. I'm just going to pick probably North Central US. And administrator login, I'm just going to go with this simple username and password that I'm aware of. But system is probably warning me that you must have all sorts of things. So I'm just going to basically pick a pretty simple password. I will just call it password 1 with capital P, because that kind of like serves the purpose of every single thing. So this is basically the username and password for SQL Azure. This is not anything to do with Windows. All we're trying to create here is the administrative login for the SQL Azure server, which should be considered equivalent to an SA account if you were looking at your regular server. If you would like to put in, basically by default, system asks you where will or which IPs can have access to it. I will basically just add my own local IP, which is basically what the system shows you. And I can just type in my username, my name and my password. So this way, if you know all the IPs from where you are ever going to access the server, you can basically put those IPs. Since I will be down the road hosting my IronSpeed application on the Microsoft Cloud or the Azure Cloud, I would also like it to say that any Azure server services can access this SQL server. And I'm going to click Finish. This will basically set up a database server for me. It should take a little bit of a time. Now, as soon as the SQL server is ready, which basically we will see shortly, it should be ready within a few minutes. It is actually pretty quick that way. One of the key differences between SQL Azure and regular SQL Server here is that the interface here is a lot better. You can definitely have a whole Windows application, but the SQL Azure server is really utilizing more of a Silverlight platform, so the front end is not as GUI intensive as you would like it to be. So one of the things which we have tried is that we try to create our applications using a regular system database or SQL database, and then we use third-party utilities to migrate the schema as well as data to SQL Azure. Of course, if somebody wants, they can really create the scripts for the entire SQL server, put it into the SQL Azure, and then they can work it out that way as well. But we just found out that this is a lot easier as far as what we basically have discussed or discovered. So as you can see, after refreshing, I have my basically SQL server created, and it only has one database by the name master, and this is going to be the fully qualified DNS name of my SQL server. And if I expand the SQL server, I only have one database. Once the SQL server is all ready, we basically can create another database, and we will call this database also CRM, just because we would like to migrate our existing CRM application over to the SQL Azure. You can decide whether it's web edition or business edition. That depends on the cost of the SQL Azure license, as well as some limitations which we have. But for our purpose, we can pick one or the other because we are actually in the trial edition. As you can also see, the web edition cannot exceed more than 1 gig, whereas the business edition can go up to 10 gig. In our case, we will just basically stick with web edition because 1 gig is enough, and it will probably get set up sooner. So I'm just going to say I'm going to create a new database by the name CRM, and of course the CRM got created. Now once you want to manage the SQL database, what we can do here is that we can click on manage. Another window pops up, and this window will let me manage my SQL server. Of course, if you remember, my username was Akesh Gupta, password 1, and now I am in my SQL Azure. This is as good as it gets at this present stage. Of course, I'm sure as Microsoft will improve and come up with the new versions, they will definitely start working on it. So as you can see, this is just showing you that this is your database, and if you want to create a new new table and so on, we basically just have to find out from where we can create it, or we can always run a new create queries, and those queries can be what we can use. So we can click on the design. We would like to design a new table. I can say new table. System is basically going to give me an interface, just like you see what is the name of the table. This name of the table can be sample table, and what type of fields would you like, what type of their column names are, column date types are, and so on, size. So this is kind of one interface which you can work with. Of course, I'm not going to go this route because it just in my opinion takes a little bit too long for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically rather utilize third-party tools, which I have in this case from a company in UK by the name Redgate. It's a SQL Compare and Data Compare, which is a very great tool. And I'm just going to basically paste in the URL that basically was assigned to my SQL Azure server. In this case, this was the fully qualified DNS name. Let me just copy it, and I can paste it here. I can type in my username and password, and the name of the database, database1, and I can say compare. What this is going to do is it's going to basically talk to my local SQL server, talk to the SQL Azure, and it will basically show me the differences. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically let it create all the details by running a script from remote. Please note that the latest version of Redgate SQL Compare and SQL Data Compare definitely works very well with SQL Azure. So at this point, what we would like to do is we would like to copy the 4 tables, all the stored procedures and all the details over to SQL Azure, and let's deploy it. Of course, we can create a script and then run a script there also, but since we have the access to the tool, why not use it just to save some time. We will do the same thing once the SQL Compare has worked very well, and as you can see, it will come back and say every single thing is matching. I can do the same thing onto the data side. And compare the data. And we would like to copy from local to Azure. It's basically saying there are 4 tables. These are the number of records, and let's sync the data as well. We have not modified anything to Redgate SQL Compare or Data Compare out of the box, so this is basically pretty easy to do it. So now if I basically click on CRM, click on refresh, system will basically show me the database. I go to my system, and I can basically just go back, or I can basically kind of either close it or refresh it, whatever the case may be. I can try refreshing it. And CRM was database name was CRM, username we know, password we know, and now you will see that SQL Server automatically has all the details that we basically came in there with. So I have basically my CRM database here, System is telling me about size and everything. I can go to design, and system will show me all my tables. What is the table size, how many rows there are. I can look at views. There are no views. I can look at store procedures, and we will definitely find some store procedures. If we would like to edit a store procedure, I can definitely click on edit, and there's the same SQL store procedures that you have here. We have not made any modification to any store procedure. So far we have successfully migrated our local SQL database to a SQL Azure database. Now the only thing left here is to take the application and make sure it's running with SQL Azure. In order to do that, what we are going to do is we are going to open up the RSpeed application, look at the database connection string. I'm going to basically replace it with the name of the the DNS for the SQL Azure, and I'm going to put my username and password. Akesh Gupta, password 1. Save it. And just so that we can be 100% sure, let's actually stop our local version of basically SQL Server, just so that we know for sure. I just closed out the Redgate tools. Sometimes they have open connections which sometimes do not let SQL services stop. So at this point I'm going to stop my SQL Server. So this way we know that the local SQL Server was not running at all. And after we have saved this whole thing, I can basically go back and try to go database synchronize scan only, and system will definitely connect to the SQL Azure because that is what it's being used from the web config file, and system says there are no changes. If I would like, I can rebuild all. And this is another thing that I would want to share with you. Once you have the SQL Azure connection, RSpeed can definitely work with it, and if you want, or for all future details, you can actually even connect your SQL Enterprise Manager to the SQL Azure server. It's just a SQL authentication at this point. As you can see, it's somewhat limited. You don't see all the choices, but you do have the tables, views, and if you basically try to change the design of any of the existing tables, in this case the account type, and I click on design, as you can see the design is not there. The design option is not there. But what you can do is you can definitely click on the script, and you can basically see that you can just work with the regular SQL scripts. So I found it easier to basically, rather than defining my scripts, create table or an alter table, just work with the local database and then do the migration. But in any case, I can definitely browse data. So if I want to basically script table, select to new query, system will go in and read the data and will show me all the values. Absolutely no problem. It's just another SQL server stored at a remote location on the cloud. So as you can see, everything so far is going pretty well, and let's just validate that our application is working. If I basically go back and refresh my application, the sign in window comes up. I can log in into the application. I can access my data. I can do every single thing just like it was a local SQL server. And as you can see, my local SQL server has been stopped, but the SQL Azure server, which is what I created, is definitely up and running. And of course, you can read more about the SQL Azure, or you can read more about the whole Azure platform, and Microsoft has provided us with a lot of tools where you can create multiple instances of servers which are definitely replicated. So I hope that this clarifies to you guys how easy it is to work with SQL Azure using RSpeed Designer. The only trick here is that sometimes people get kind of a little bit lost in the scripts, because SQL Azure may not have as rich user interface as a local SQL implementation. So the best recommendation I can make here is that work with the local database, and once every single thing is said and done and everything is working fine, follow the steps which I just shared with you here to migrate the database to SQL Azure, and then migrate your application web config to connect to that SQL Azure. There will be another presentation coming pretty soon which will share with you how to take your RSpeed Designer application and push it to the Microsoft Azure cloud for hosting. Please keep watching, and I look forward to showing you the Microsoft cloud publishing in one of my upcoming videos. Thanks a lot.